for this session. My name's Natasha Still. I know a number of you. I can see quite a few familiar faces, those that have worked with me before in my previous roles or in other sort of forums. I'm the head of service performance, quality and standards at the Money and Pension Service, and my team are responsible for monitoring the MaPS standards, which is what we're here to talk about today. We're also responsible for a number of other key pieces of work, including the quality accreditation scheme and and managing our performance from a more broader perspective. There's a number of my team that are here today. They're going to help either provide a presentation or help facilitate in the breakout rooms later on. Just to let you all know, we are recording the session, so if you do have any issues with being recorded, I would suggest either obviously being off camera or choosing not to speak during the session. We will be sharing the slides and output of the session afterwards, so you will get copies of them to everyone who has registered. And there will be breakout rooms for you to join to provide feedback later on in the session. I'm just going to pop my slides up so I can sort of talk you through the agenda for today. Bear with me 1 second. Hopefully we are there. Sarah, can you just let me know that they're full screen?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Okay. So just quickly run through the agenda, what we want to cover off today. We have got a short information video about the MaPS standards, which we are really pleased with. It's very much an informative video to help raise awareness about what the MaPS standards are, what the purpose is, a bit of the background for them, which I know a number of you will know having worked directly with us. But what we've been really pleased to see on the attendee list today is we've got a wide range of attendees from organisations we don't fund, organisations that we work with in our sort of partnership space. We've got representatives from the FCA on the call today, and we've also got a large number of advisors that obviously have worked under MaPS grants or contracts for some time. So it is a really broad group of people on the call. So we're going to go with the approach that some of you may not have worked under the MaPS standards before, and we're very much providing a background as to where we were and where we've come from, where we've been and where we've got to. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background. I'm going to recap on our sector feedback session that we had last year. So there's quite a few of you that are on this session that attended that sector feedback session last year, and recap on what we've done and what feedback we've taken on board. I'm going to hand over to two members of my team, Catherine Thomas and Sarah McNeese, to talk through two of the key work streams. So our sort of approach to organisational wide MaPS standards and how we've developed a controls environment there. And Sarah's going to talk us through some of the learnings we've had from Test and Learn. We are going to try and cram an awful lot into 25-minute time, so please bear with us. We're going to try and rattle through this, because I am conscious that where we get a lot of value is in the breakout sessions and allowing you all to share your feedback with us. I can't see any hands or any and if anyone wants to speak, but what I would ask is a few basic housekeeping. Please be conscious of the people that are in the room. Obviously, I know for many of you, this is your lives day in, day out, and will feel quite passionately about some of the topics we're talking about. Please be kind to each other. The breakout rooms are an opportunity for you to share your feedback, raise questions, and we will absolutely have note takers there taking them away and on board. And we would ask that during the sort of 25 minutes where we're sharing the information, if we can keep questions to the end, that would be really helpful. But Sarah is going to sort of help facilitate, given I can only see my slides at the moment. We will then regroup, share the feedback, and we'll do a summary and close. There is a survey at the end of the session, which gives you the opportunity to give further feedback or to let us know what you'd like to hear more of. And we will be actively signposting you to where we have put other information. So one of the key sources of information at the moment for us is on the debtquality.org site, where we've been putting a lot of our latest updates on the standards so far. So without sort of any further ado, I will crack on straight away into our video. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it. I have enabled the sound. So hopefully this goes well. Sarah, if you can let me know if you can't hear it, that would be great.
Welcome to a short film about MaPS standards and, importantly, how they affect you and the work that we all do. Let me recap a bit of background. In June 2021, we launched the FCA-approved MaPS standards. Since then, We have put these at the center of our approach to quality assurance, and this applies to all the services that we deliver to our customers and across our different channels. Our approach to monitoring compliance with the MaPS standards ensures we are meeting the needs of our customers by having a robust set of controls in place, such as policies, processes, and guidance. These controls can be preventative, detective, or corrective. This approach reduces the risk of non-compliance and protects ourselves, our partners, and most importantly, our customers. So how do MaPS standards work in an everyday operational sense? Firstly, they set out clearly and in one place the principles for delivery of the MaPS guidance and advice functions, helping us deliver services that improve consumers' financial knowledge and helping them to make informed decisions. Our standards provide a framework for embedding best practice and continually improving services, and they can be used as a reference point for collaboration with partner organizations, stakeholders, and the devolved governments. They are also there to ensure that we comply with our obligations under the public sector equality duty. MaPS standards will be reviewed annually with input from key stakeholders and may be updated from time to time to reflect any substantive changes to MaPS service delivery. The 11 MaPS standards cover all our processes and functions, from service standards and practitioner-led advice and guidance, helping to ensure customers are informed impartially and accurately, to lessons learned so we can continually improve our services. Think about the MaPS standards when developing any new customer-facing propositions or services. And if you are delivering those services directly to our customers, ensure the standards are embedded into the processes and systems that you use. In a nutshell, our standards are there to protect our customers, to protect our organization, and to protect you. So there you have a quick overview of MaPS standards, short and sweet, but you will all recognize how important they are. Now, it's your turn to look into what each of the standards covers in detail and discover how they affect you and your work. And if you take just one thing from this, it is that the MaPS standards should be embedded in everything we do. Go to the MaPS website or reach out to your SPQS contact and get to know and embrace the MaPS standards.
So that there's a short video there for all of you, and we will be putting a link on that for the video onto our quality site. One of the key lessons that we took away from the feedback sessions last year was how could we make more tools and guidance and information available, not just directly through delivery partners in the monthly or quarterly meetings that we're having, but how can we actually reach wider range of advisors or reach out to other people that we're currently not directly engaging with. So we have taken that on board and looked at our communication and engagement approach, and the video is just one step in that direction to try and raise some awareness. So I won't cover too much of what's on the background slide, as some of that was in the video, so hopefully it's ticked off some of this. But for those of you that aren't familiar with the standards in detail, there is a link embedded into the slides, so you can go and see the 11 standards with the 72 sub-standards broken down. For those of you that are subject to customer facing assessment, it's really standards 1 and 2 you want to look at, but we really believe that the 11 standards more broadly have the holistic approach to what we want to see across an organisation. And the one that's been really important to us is standard 11, which is lessons learned, which both myself and the team have really embedded into the work that we do, continually reflecting and trying to reach out to take on board feedback. One of the bits that obviously wasn't in the video is that last year we did commence some feedback and engagement sessions. We engaged with over 80 people from advisors, quality managers, technical supervisors, CEOs of local assistance advice to take on board feedback on our previous quality framework, which was DAPA, and also to understand what more you wanted from us. So we have taken some of that feedback on board, and I'm keen to sort of share with you some of the sort of changes that we made as a result of that feedback. Here's just a couple of snippets of the things that you did tell us, and I want to really focus on a few of them. One of them was around improved communications with frontline advisors, and I know some of you have been actively communicating with us. I think I saw Amy pop up. I'm in some working groups and some discussion groups with Unite members. We've also got discussions with IMA members. We have been proactively engaging a lot more with frontline advisors to really hear what's happening on the ground. Another key thing that you told us was around the fact that it felt like there was a lack of trust or understanding in what you do and how you operate. I think one of the real takeaways from the last session was showing how many of us, both in the quality team and in the debt team at MaPS, have worked in the sector. We have proactively worked through recruitment to ensure that we're recruiting the right skills. So I now have 4 people in my team that have worked directly in the debt sector or were previously debt advisors. We've been trying to build up our SME knowledge within the team. And through some of the work that Catherine's going to talk to you about, we've been trying to better understand your different delivery models and look at the different controls and mechanisms you have in place to ensure that the advice is good, of good quality. There was quite a lot of feedback that we took away around moving to a more customer outcomes focused model. And for those of you that did work under DAPA, you'll know that it primarily focused on a pass or fail. We've taken that on board into the new approach, and we're now very much focused on customer impact and whether not meeting a standard has had impact to the customer. There's quite a few other bits around clarity of the minimum requirements, more visibility of our tools. There was a lot of talk, and I know still is a lot of talk around the confirmation of advice letters. We do have, as I mentioned, colleagues from the FCA on the call, and we have been sharing that feedback in our regular calls around how can we provide better support and guidance on what is required when it comes to confirmation of advice letters. So just a few bits of feedback of what we heard in those sessions. I just want to talk you through about what we've done about it so far. So the key things for us was we had an opportunity last April to make some changes to our grant wording, and those of you that were subject to the subject's definitely not the right word, but we're working under the 10-month grants. You will have had engagement sessions with us where we talked through the changes we made immediately off the back of those engagement sessions, and just a summary of some of the changes on this slide, but just to talk through some of the key messaging that we heard, which was that MaPS had been very prescriptive in our approach to quality previously. We had requested specific requirements when it came to the number of file checks we expected organisations to complete. And actually, some of the trust issues that we identified were in us needing to actively encourage organisations to develop their own quality assurance processes, take ownership for those processes, and operate as independently regulated organisations, which they are. We removed our minimum requirement for file checks. We do have a sampling methodology, so there is a minimum number of sampling cases that need to be submitted. But we stepped away from telling organisations what they must do from a quality perspective as a first line, and actively encouraged a risk-based approach to be embedded. So I know a number of you that we've spoken to over the last year have said that you have seen changes in the quality approaches in your organisations. There is far more autonomy in how those are delivered from a more practical QA perspective. We also had feedback from a number of advisors that having to continually do the debt supervisor assessment when they've been in post for between 7 and 10 years, it didn't feel like the right level, and that it was more suited to those that were new to post. So we removed the requirement to do that annually. It's still optional, it is available, but the requirement was there for those in the first 2 years of post as a supporting CPD and continuous improvement. We also recognised that we needed the opportunity to properly test and learn our new approach. Something we had been criticised for before was making changes without actually understanding the impact or testing how that would land in the different organisations. And we used the 10-month period of the grants to test the different products and the different guidance documents that we had with the MaPS standards to really ensure that they were fit for purpose. There is still some elements of consistency and calibration we're working through with delivery partners. We're not going to shy away from that. There are still a few standards where we're trying to work through what the wording means in practice. And as a number of you know, the cases are complex, and we are seeing increased case complexity coming through, whereby we're needing to really test ourselves as to what does that mean in practice. So we did take that on board. We changed the approach to a check the checker approach, really trying to take on board the feedback that the previous framework felt really onerous on advisors. It felt that the feedback was directed directly at the advisor rather than potentially on the processes and controls that have been put in place by the organisation. So this change in approach is looking at whether we think your technical supervisors or quality checkers are checking in the same way as us. So whether there is a consistent approach to monitoring, taking that step back and looking far more at assurance rather than individual advisors and what the advice that they have given. We removed triggered technical site visits, although we are still really keen to have the opportunity to come on site and work directly with the organisations. That is where we have had some of our best learning and best ability to really see the good work in practice. But we've removed it as to be almost, it was previously almost seen as a penalty, and we want to take a far more collaborative approach. We have had a change in our approach to scoring, which we put in pretty immediately, which was to look at a more customer focused assessment. So rather than solely pass or fail, we do still have met and not met, but when a standard has not been met, we do then assess whether there has been impact on the customer. So we have not met with no impact, not met with impact, and not met with impact, but it's detrimental. So 3 categorizations. And what we have seen by breaking down those categorizations is actually the number with detrimental impact is significantly lower. There are still some with impact, but we're able to manage those far more closely with organisations and look at action planning rather than it feeling like a fail. And that's been a significant improvement for us. And detriment was redefined to align to other frameworks to be relevant to actual financial harm to the customer. So those were some of the immediate changes we made. Just a couple of other things that we did change off the back of it that I wanted to share. We are now producing monthly and quarterly communications to delivery partners, but we're also posting those on our MaPS quality site. So as I mentioned earlier, the debtquality.org.uk site is available. Please note that some of the content is still relevant to our old framework. We are in the process of updating the content on the main site, but the latest update section is up to date. And that section does have all of everything we send out to delivery partners on a monthly basis to do with changes to guidance, changes to the framework, any changing to wording, also positive updates, information about the team. So we've got in this month, we've got information about 2 new members of the team. So please do, take the time to go on there and have a look. And we're always keen to hear your feedback and hear what you want to hear more from us. So please do reach out. In addition to that, our debt team have established an advisor panel. I know I could see a number of you joining that are on that panel or have been working with the panel. And thanks to the IMA for working with us on establishing that. That will really help us inform our future approach to commissioning, but also give us the opportunity to hear views on quality and what we can do to improve that moving forward. We have really invested the time in test and learn, working with delivery partners, and I have to say thank you so much to those of you who have worked really closely with us during that time. It was invaluable to have the opportunity to really get into the detail of the guidance and work directly with organisations, in particularly on developing our process for appeals. So in the event that the KPI is not met, we have a documented appeals process. We had 3 organisations that were willing to work with us to develop that, and the feedback was really, really helpful and did go to show that actually working more closely in collaboration is going to work in improving those outcomes. What we have definitely seen differences in the MaPS standards are really designed to look at the customer journey, look at the customer outcomes, and look at the situation from a higher level. So stepping away from the granularity that was in DAPA to bringing it up a level, allowing organisations to have their own processes and their own way of meeting the standards, with no sort of blanket expectations or minimum requirements for every organisation to adhere to, has also been helpful. And we have developed 3 key work streams for monitoring the standards, which Catherine and Sarah are going to cover off shortly. But the first one is looking at the standards at an organisational level, so not directly at advisors, but putting the onus on the organisation to say, do you have different processes and controls in place to ensure you meet these from a preventative level, so whether that be training, processes, policies, from a detective level, so quality assurance, internal audit, second line compliance, and from a corrective. So in the event something does go wrong, are you taking proactive action to fix it? And that's how we really want to work moving forwards, is rather than focusing solely on detective, just trying to quality check everything, actually ensuring that the processes are in place in the first instance. And the third one, which we're not going to cover a huge amount today, is facilitated continuous improvement, which is MaPS working more closely with organisations to help improvement where, if we identify improvement is needed. I'm going to hand over to Catherine now, just to talk you through the work that we have done on the control self-assessment. Catherine, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Fab.
Thanks, Natasha. So as Natasha's already introduced, our kind of focus, a big part of our focus in the monitoring mechanisms we were trying to develop was to seek a better understanding of individual services delivery model and the appropriate controls environment within the context of the delivery model that their service operates to. So we further developed the control self-assessment process in response to that kind of need. So this monitoring mechanism is really seeking assurance, first of understanding of the standards. So has the service provided evidence within the control self-assessment that the standards have been understood? Secondly, as Natasha alluded to, the controls environment, those kind of preventative, detective and corrective controls. So evidence that services have the systems, policies, process, training, etc., embedded into the way that they operate to help ensure compliance from an organisational structure point of view. And then monitoring, so not just other controls there, but do they work? Are they being monitored, reviewed and continually improved? So in spring 2022, we took on a lot of feedback from the delivery partners that had worked within the template that had been rolled out previously and sought to use the lessons learned from that first round of submissions to drive improvements. We got lots of feedback around engagement, the clarity of guidance that was provided, and making sure we were setting out our expectations in terms of what did we mean by complying with the standards at that organisational level. Also, we had lots of feedback around the structure of the submission and the actual way in which we were collecting that information. And really, we were also able to take on board a lot of the ways in which the services chose to demonstrate that evidence to us. And we saw some really good kind of structures coming out where services were using their own template or develop their own way to share that information with us. So what that resulted in was a consistent template for all services to use that allowed us to report their compliance status, confidence levels, and understand their controls environment. And it also was a really helpful tool for us to be able to monitor any actions that might be happening in that space. So controls that were maybe not rolled out across all delivery channels, or where there'd already been identified some gaps that needed filling, or areas for continuous improvement. So it was an opportunity for services to tell us what they were already doing to continually improve the controls environment that they had in place. If you just move on to the next slide, please, Sarah. So just some of those kind of you said we did. So as part of that process, and we've talked about it a lot, we were asked for kind of more guidance on expectations and opportunities to check understanding. So further guidance was developed. We also increased our engagement activity during that process, and we had workshops, one-on-ones. We also worked with some partners who completed part of the control self-assessment and kind of asked us for an interim check-in to make sure that they were kind of doing it in line with expectations and guidance. So we really increased the intensity of engagement throughout the process. We were also, it was also flagged, you know, we're being asked for lots of information. There are 72 standards and there's lots of controls that are all linked to ensuring compliance with all of those. So is there any way that this can be done in a more streamlined way in the future? So we took that on board in terms of the design of the control self-assessment template, but also the mechanisms we use to host that. So the new control self-assessment was hosted on SharePoint, which was felt to be a bit more user-friendly than some kind of really scary Excel spreadsheets that we might have used in the past. But also it's live and dynamic, so it allowed people to go and make updates and then have a colleague check those updates before it was submitted. And what it also means is that is now there, and it can be updated in the future when there's any changes, but really the annual update is only the self-attestation part. So it allows those updates to be made in a more streamlined way and won't be a big cumbersome exercise on an annual basis. And then finally, we'd like to reduce the burden on kind of frontline advisors. So linked into what Natasha has been saying already, this really focuses on the organisational controls environment, things like policies, processes, training that happens in the background. So it really is a way for us to understand how the service operates and not necessarily asking for anything from those advisors themselves. I think I'm handing over to Sarah next.
You are. I will move the slides on. Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is to talk a bit about the test and learn that we did. So after the session we did last year, where we listened and took on feedback from various advisors at the sessions we did, we decided to go into a 10-month test and learn period. And the purpose of that was to work with organisations to have a look at how the standards could be implemented within organisations. So and the focus on the customer facing standards part of it. So Catherine's just talked about the organisational part of it. This is about the customer facing standards that we use to assess with organisations that we fund. So during that test and learn period, 11 delivery partners participated. And the purpose was that we would look at the whole process from the customer journey, from the customer's perspective throughout that journey, and look at how those cases could be submitted, how they could be assessed, etc., through to look at what those assessment results look like. So there's quite a lot of work that was involved in looking at what sampling would look like for different organisations, how that scoring would work. So we developed a sampling and scoring methodology. So there was a lot of developing of different processes and working with organisations that we're currently funding to look at what the best way of doing that was. We also had an independent supplier who was looking at assessing those cases. So when they were assessed, the delivery partners would be submitting, they would assess themselves and they would submit those cases, and then the independent supplier would assess those as well. And what we're looking for is consistency. So we had calibration sessions where we would look at various what the variance was basically from how the delivery partner had scored themselves and how the independent assessors assessed as well. Over 1,382 cases were independently assessed in that 10-month period, which was really good. And overall, they were achieving 80% KPI, so which was great. So they were all achieving or exceeding the KPI which had been set. During that time, to support the assessing of those standards, we worked with the sector to develop guidance to help give some thoughts and ideas and direction on how to assess them. As we worked through the test and learn process, we did different iterations of that, and that was based on the feedback that we were gaining through calibration to help make sure that we were actually developing something that was going to work, basically. So and that's basically where we ended up at the end. So we did 4 testing periods and 3 rounds of calibration. Can you move on to the next slide, Natasha, please? So as I said, there are 11 delivery partners took part in the test and learn, which was really good. When we looked at the highest variance and reporting period was 3%. So that's what we're looking for, really less than 5%. So on average, it's coming at 3%, which was really, really good. And that just gives us reassurance that how delivery partners are assessing themselves and how the independent assessor is assessing that there isn't a huge amount of variance there. Can you move on to the next slide? So where are we now, basically, with the customer facing standards? So as of May, with our current contracts, grants and contracts, delivery partners are achieving 85%. The actual KPI is 80%, so that's really good. And that's been since we started in February through the new contracts, new grants. That's been fairly consistent amongst 1 or 2 just falling slightly below, but on the whole, achieving that quality KPI over 80%. The variance, as you can see, is 1.6%, which is exactly where we need it to be. Cases of detriment is relatively low as well. So for me, that was one that was identified there. So we continue to work through the different cases and calibration. So we continue with calibration and working with organisations, and obviously there's appeal process as well. So we're working through those. as I said, we're seeing a minimum amount of detriment, and there's a total of 4 that have come in since February, so that's good too. Some of the highest scoring standards are around pre-assessment and information requirements and managing personal data. So that's where they're scoring met. That's really quite consistent across all the delivery partners. And where we're scoring the lowest is accuracy of advice, exploration and options and next steps. So that's something we are picking up in monthly meetings that we're having as delivery partners, and also on those calibration sessions as well. So we're having those open conversations with the delivery partners, continue to do so that we're continually learning throughout this whole process too. So that's what's coming next with the customer facing standards. I think I'll hand it to you, Natasha.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I think it's also just worth noting that when we say the 3 lowest scoring, we don't mean low actually in scoring, because in reality, you're looking at sort of averages of 76 or 77%. And what we are finding in the calibration is it's not necessary that they're not fully meeting the standards. It's that the standard has been partially met, but there is just that small gap that needs improving, or some evidence that we need adding. Particularly around things like generic fact sheets. So it may just meant that it needed some additional tailoring. So we're still, whilst we put it there as lowest scoring, I don't want that to be misleading. we're not overly concerned. We're actually really pleased that when I was looking through the number of highest scoring standards, we had over 6 standards that are routinely scoring 100%. I just picked these 2 out because they're particularly in the pre-assessment information requirements, was an area that previously in DAPA had been picked up as not always being met, but we are routinely seeing really good evidence that advisors and organisations are giving customers or clients, depending on what language you use, the information they need to know what they need for an appointment or for an assessment. So there is a huge amount of good practice, and just want to echo Sarah's point on the KPI that since February, we had the average KPI has not fallen below the 80% expectation, which for a new quality framework with less than a year since it's been rolled out is really good. So we're pleased. So well done to everyone that's worked towards that. In terms of what's next for us, so for those of you that know the background of the MaPS standards, that we do have a statutory obligation under the Financial Guidance and Claims Act to have documented standards that are approved by the FCA. Within that act, there's a number of different requirements that we have to fulfill. So we have to be able to evidence that we are adequately monitoring and enforcing those standards, but also that the standards remain suitable and adequate for the services that we offer. This MaPS standards don't just cover debt advice. While this session is primarily focused on debt advice as a follow-up to last year, we do also have the standards being assessed in both our money guidance space and across pension guidance, which covers pension freedoms and pension wise appointments. We are at different stages in our timeline for each of those different sectors, but they are an obligation that sit across all 3. There is a requirement within the Act for the FCA to conduct a triennial review of the MaPS standards. So every 3 years, they will review how we have monitored and enforced the standards to date, and also whether those standards do continue to remain suitable. So that standard has now that review has now started. I've met with the FCA last week, and we are submitted the information as to what we have done to date. We expect to receive a report with recommendations or with output from that review that we can then incorporate into our future approach. It is also an opportunity for us to share the feedback we have had from many of you that are on this call as to some of the wording on the standards, and I know Sarah and team have gathered that feedback and documented it for us to share. We are also continuing to develop our communications approach, and we are really keen to hear more from you all as to what you'd like to hear more about, particularly when it comes to quality. And so please do use the survey at the end of the call. And we're also really keen to work closely with our partners, particularly where it comes to changes in the regulatory requirements and consumer duty has been one that we've been particularly interested in. We've been really pleased to hear feedback from some organisations that the work we have done through the control self-assessment, documenting training policies, processes, etc., has set them in good stead for their consumer duty submissions, which are due later this month. Members of our team have attended training with BRS, which they found really helpful to better understand the requirements under consumer duty. It is also available for advisors to attend. So we'd suggest looking out for posts on LinkedIn about available training, but we are trying to work closely on that as much as we can. So in terms of sort of next steps, so we are now going to move you all into breakout sessions. You should all, Sarah has hopefully worked this all out, so you should automatically move into your groups. Please bear in mind that there is quite a lot of you on the call, so the groups will be between 25 and 30 people per breakout session. Just a few pieces of housekeeping. Please don't be offended if we ask you to move your point along. We are keen to get as many people's voices heard as we can in what is essentially a 30-minute session. And we will reactivate the chat for the breakout session. So please do put your comments in the chat, and we will be collating them throughout the course of the session. You will have a facilitator, which will be a member of each of my team. They will introduce themselves, and you will have a note taker. But as I said earlier, please do be mindful of those that you've got in your groups. The focus of the session is what would you like to see incorporated into the future quality of debt advice approach? Are there things that you think you've used before that have been successful, or you think we can take on board? How's it worked? What do you think we could do to improve quality more broadly? Really keen to take on board any further feedback that we can factor into anything we may change, particularly when it comes to our longer term commissioning. So hopefully, Sarah, you are going to move us all into the groups.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do that now.
Thank you.